Sanctuary cities are making it very difficult to arrest the criminals. For instance, Chicago, very well educated. They've been educated how to defy ICE, how to hide from ICE.
He's mad that they can't cheat in their Gestapo operations, that there's still like some semblance of rules and restrictions that they must abide by in their dragnet operations. And that's very frustrating for him. Like, oh, they're very well educated. They know the rules that I can't violate the Fourth Amendment. I don't like that. And
I've seen many pamphlets from many NGOs. Here's how you escape ICE from arresting you. Here's what you need to do. They call it know your rights. I call it how to escape arrest. There's a warrant for your arrest, and they tell you how to hide from ICE. No, don't open your door. Don't answer questions. Okay, you can call it know your rights all you want, but there's an order for their removal. They've been ordered removed by a federal judge after due process at great taxpayer expense. They need to go. But if we got to play that cat and mouse game, that's what we're going to do till every one of them gone.
Good guy behavior, real good guy behavior. A law enforcement member of the federal law enforcement agency, upset that people know their rights. That's when you know someone is definitely a good guy, okay? When they're like, I hate that these people have a decent understanding of the rules and the law, and therefore it makes it much harder for us to do these mass apprehensions. And I hate it. I don't like it one bit. We need to stop educating these migrants so they can be just as stupid as I am. Tom Holman.
It's expensive to enforce the laws and protect our national security, but I don't put a price tag on securing that border. Once we secure the border, we show consequences. The number's already down.
So they're literally doing the more expensive thing specifically as a show of force. I will say I'm not particularly excited at how little we're talking about, like whether or not these people are actually criminals, what their circumstances were, basically moving on to the next point of contention fairly quickly, which is like the logistical issues. I think that you probably should spend a little bit more time addressing the truth of these claims and also whether or not we should be doing these mass deportations in general. Like, I feel like that is, at least from where I'm standing, like when these guys just go, nah, they're just criminals. Oh, they're criminals, FS, for sure. See, that's what I mean. It's like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Maybe I'm wrong. That just kind of doesn't make sense that we're just automatically running with the assumption that these are like some of the most dangerous, violent criminals of all time, but then also not recognizing that if that is the case, then there are far larger, more consequential problems that immediately must be addressed in terms of how the local court structure works, like how lower courts work, because that would imply that the lower courts are just straight up letting people go. Dude, I saw a TikTok that I want to show you guys about where Joe Rogan was, okay? I need you to see this. This is back when I was a Joe Rogan head as well. Here's Joe Rogan and Sam Harris, two people who I disagree with vehemently now, talking about Donald Trump.
The illegal aliens
round them up. Gonna round them up.
And do what with them?
Send them back to their country.
Oh, that is so crazy. That's such a crazy idea, and it's so brutal. The idea that, I mean, it's a subhuman thing. The only reason why people would come to America is because they felt like it would make their life better. So people take a big risk. There's not an easy way to do it if you're poor, and you don't have any qualifications for any unusual job. I mean, and right. you're trying to get across to Mexico. But everybody who does it because they want to improve their life. You know, and the idea that one group of people shouldn't be able to do it and one group should, just because they were born on the right side of some strange line that is only a couple hundred years old.
But the climate change thing is also insane and dangerous.
Well, he was a birther.
Right, yeah, right.
He was one of the original birthers. He was saying that Obama's birth certificate was bullshit. He was born in Kenya, right? Wasn't he one of those guys?
Oh, yeah, he was
I would love
self-funding that for a while. Yeah,
I would love it if he got into office and just said, "Listen, folks."
Like, this is Joe Rogan in 2016, and his approach to immigration right here, like specifically talking about undocumented migrants right here, is my understanding of the reality. Okay, because it is the reality. No one is coming into America with like impure intentions. Okay, especially not 20 million people. The assumption that 20 million undocumented migrants, if there are 20 million of them on U.S. soil, with a hive mind, right? Operate with a hive mind to begin with is insane. Like dudes from Honduras, Guatemala, Cuba, Venezuela, the Congo, China, all around the world, right? People come into the United States of America from all around the world. The notion that like an evil act of a singular undocumented migrant is actually reflective of the 20 million population is psychotic, especially when they are from virtually every different demographic, ethnicity, creed, background, race, educational attainment. Like they are not, this is not one blob. That's number one. Number two, the notion that they come here specifically to do crimes or to ruin American society is also ridiculous. Like, these are just normal people, man. They're normal people just like you and me. And they want the same exact things. They want a roof over their heads. They want a better future for themselves and their kids. They want to have a regular job, you know? So the idea that they're coming here to do crimes and like undermine American culture is completely ridiculous. It's so silly. I don't understand it. So coming through the legal process, great question. Some of the people that are being deported are actually coming in through the legal process, just so you know. The difference between an undocumented migrant and a documented migrant is just paperwork. And as far as the undocumented migrants that have come in, okay, the reason why they have come in through criminal means, which is not a severe violation at all, right? You're passing, as Joe Rogan correctly points out, an imaginary boundary that we set up like 100 years ago. It didn't even exist. It's just paperwork. You are so pathetically virtuous. It's insane. First of all, I don't understand why virtue is considered a vice in this regard, okay? You are just saying that you agree that I have the morally correct position. That is not like a pejorative. You can't say, man, I hate how pathetically virtuous you are. What has happened to American society? What has happened to people? What do you mean pathetically virtuous? It's like that tweet, never commit the sin of empathy. Like, what is happening? What do you mean, the sin of empathy? Illegal immigrant rights over American people's rights. Nice one, Hasan. Your rights begin and end on the boundaries of other people, okay? On other people's rights. There's no such thing as like illegal immigrants getting more rights than Americans. Like, that's ridiculous. That's not a real thing. And also, that should not be a real thing, okay? And in terms of just paperwork, it is the truth. Because the difference between an undocumented migrant, when people say, just come in the legal way, that's what they're saying. File the paperwork. And I'm telling people that they do file the paperwork and they are still considered undocumented migrants because it's just about paperwork. That's the reason why J.D. Vance can go on the national stage and say, Haitians with temporary protected status, proper paperwork, are undocumented migrants that are going to be deported from this country.
Now, the media loves to say that the Haitian migrants, hundreds of thousands of them, by the way, 20,000 in Springfield, but hundreds of thousands of them all across our country, they are here legally. And what they mean is that Kamala Harris used two separate programs, mass parole and temporary protective status. She used two programs to wave a wand and to say, we're not going to deport those people here. Well, if Kamala Harris waves the wand illegally and says these people are now here legally, I'm still going to call them an illegal alien. An illegal action from Kamala Harris does not make an alien legal. That is not how this works.
They're not undocumented. They have the documentation. They quite literally have the proper paperwork, which means they went through the process. They got criminal background checks. The Department of Homeland Security, which is not a woke institution, has decided that these people are allowed into the country. Okay? That's number one. Number two, in terms of like national security conversations, national security fears in general, this again goes back to a falsehood that I was addressing in the beginning. These people are not coming in here to do crimes. And as a matter of fact, the data also reflects that reality. Undocumented migrants are responsible for a smaller share of crimes per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens are. They do less crime in general. Define paperwork, be more specific. I don't know how much more specific I can be. Paperwork as in going through the proper channels and opening up the proper channels in the hands of the federal government, of course, opening up the proper channels for these undocumented migrants to be processed. America has created amnesty for undocumented migrants numerous times throughout its history. Ronald Reagan very famously did this as well. Defined paperwork in this situation would be whichever the proper paperwork is for processing undocumented migrants and making them documented migrants. A big part of the reason why there are undocumented migrants to begin with, like the people that just come in, right, without the proper paperwork, is because the government doesn't want there to be enough paperwork readily available, enough processing readily available. They just don't let in that many people in general. It is a very long and arduous process. That's the real reason. Yes, as someone in the chat pointed this out as well, as my God King Gaben has said, piracy is a service problem, right? And he's correct. Piracy is a service problem. The American government and its immigration processes are no different. Undocumented migration is directly born out of the fact that the federal government makes it like a 10-year to 15-year process for you to get properly cleared to get into the country. I mean, I have described the real reasons as to why the federal government has this approach, and that is because they want there to be an endless pool of undocumented laborers, people that have no legal means to fight back if they are over by their bosses, people who play a role in the American agribusiness, people who play an incredibly important role in the construction sector, that are a permanently refreshing pool of labor that will work because they're in much more desperate condition, that will work for pennies on the dollar, doing backbreaking labor that can be deported from this country on a moment's notice. If these people were all documented, then business owners wouldn't be able to abuse them as much. Business owners wouldn't be able to use them as a means of depressing the wages of the documented labor pool.
What does it take? What is the standard, I guess, to go into an elementary school? Because what we had heard from immigration advocates is that this is going to provide a chilling effect to parents in the school drop-off.
I don't know what to say. Like, it's no longer hysterical to say that this is Nazi. You know what I mean? I mean, this is identical. Brother, you're talking about an elementary school, man. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? At that point, like, what does it take? Truly, what does it take for people to be like, okay, this is exactly what the Nazis were doing? A lot of people don't want to recognize that, like, their government is doing things that they've learned in history books were historically wrong, you know? Our historic enemies have done these things. They don't want to recognize that reality. And some people just actively like it, and they enjoy the pain and cruelty. And they're like, oh, no. And then for many, I think it's just like, well, they're not death camps. The Nazis didn't start off with death camps either. It starts with dehumanization, and then it moves on from dehumanization to apprehension. It moves on from apprehension to deportation. And once deportation is not like materially viable because it's too expensive, too costly, too many legal hurdles, then, you know, another alternative comes to mind, an easier way to dispose of these people. The other part of migration in this country is that, like, when I say immigration is the backbone of American society, I mean it, okay? And obviously it's a little silly for me to say this considering, you know, I'm first generation, I'm an anchor baby, fair, you know? The reason why the United States of America, which gets a lot of things wrong, was able to thrive was because of migration. Yes, it served a settler colonial purpose initially, but the reality of the matter is America was built on migration, whether it be the Pilgrims, or whether it be the constant flow of migrants coming into this nation. This is a nation of immigrants. It's like ridiculous. Everyone with the exception of Native Americans is literally a migrant. At a certain point, they migrated here, okay? Not only is it hilariously hypocritical to say, no, we got to kick the ladder down now, but it's also ridiculous because migrants are what built this country. And if you go back far enough, everyone, if you go back far enough, is a migrant or did not live here, right? Let me not just say migrant, because obviously chattel slavery also is something that happened in this country. Migrants are the reason why the United States of America, despite being a developed nation, did not fall into the same issues that many other developed nations have fallen victim to. I am at the heart right now, the epicenter of what happens when you have a developed nation run into population problems because of their xenophobia. I'm in Japan. This is literally the living, breathing example of what happens when you have restrictive immigration policies. Canada has the same level of migrants or even higher level of migration than the United States of America does, and yet it's much safer than the United States of America. Now, of course, in comparison to other countries, it's not as safe, but Canada is objectively much safer than the United States of America. One must ask the question why. Maybe it has nothing to do with migrants either. Also, it doesn't matter if Japan is safe right now because they're not safe from complete societal collapse, and that's inevitably where you arrive at when you have an interest in like maintenance of purity. They're losing their minds out here. They're like, why the are you guys not repopulating? Please repopulate. Not understanding partially the reason for their population numbers diminishing is one, because of a clear lack of migration, but also because they all work all the time. They have an insane work culture here. Same issue with Korea too. Just a crazy situation, man.
So how many years altogether did you live in the U.S.?
Almost 19 years.
19 years.
Yes. I'm scared, but now the Trump, they say they have to go, go with the criminal, but we're not a criminal,
But you have a trespassing conviction?
Yes.
Are you going to try to stay here? Or do you think you'll go back?
I have to go back, for sure.
You'll find a way back?
Yes.
While Fidel walks freely here, others are pulled aside by Guatemalan police as soon as they arrive, accused of crimes not only in the U.S., but also here in their homeland. They require a lot of resources so as to reintegrate the returnees.
Pues de momento no hay una diferencia.
Guatemala's vice president.
Trespassing and no car seat. Yeah, I'm glad that Tom Homan is taking out these real rugged criminals, dude. This is surely going to improve crime in this country. We are really tackling the crime rate, man. Thank God we're taking out all the bad guys, dude. Also separating them from their families, too. That's the other thing. I feel so much safer, don't you? I'm glad these heinous criminals have been deported by military planes with chains on their arms as they're perp walked so that the Trump administration get a W, like a horrifyingly racist W. Sorry to spam, but earlier, didn't you say illegal migration crossing the border illegally is just a civil violation? It led me down a rabbit hole that seems to say it is a crime. Being an undocumented immigrant in the U.S. alone, however, is not. Wait, what? Yeah. What do you think a civil violation is? A civil violation is still a crime. There's a difference between a civil violation and a felony. Yeah. A moving violation is still a crime, right? Like a traffic ticket is still a crime. I think you misunderstood what I was saying. And I don't think you're being disingenuous. It's important to clarify these things. Like, technically, jaywalking is a crime, right? Jaywalking is a crime, but we don't treat it in the same way that we would other crimes because we understand the societal harm or the impact that is being done when someone jaywalks is not, it's not all too significant. Do you think this will get to the point of arresting legal immigrants and citizens? Yes. Not only has it already gotten to the point of detaining U.S. citizens, but yes. Illegal entry into the United States is a federal crime that often comes with civil penalties. Illegally crossing the border into the United States has many consequences, such as deportation and bans on re-entry into the U.S. Okay? Unlawful entry into the United States means that the person has entered the United States outside of immigration laws that allow legal entrance to the U.S. U.S. unlawful entry is legally called improper entry. Unlawful presence is when a person stays in the U.S. after entering the U.S. unlawfully. You can overstay your visa, or you can remain in the U.S. after improper entry. The majority of the undocumented migrants that are now on U.S. soil year over year are actually visa overstayers, and they're not border crossers. If your visa is expired, you must legally leave the United States. However, there are exceptions to unlawful presence. Speak with your immigration attorney. You were illegally in the U.S. as a minor. You were the victim of abuse or sexual human trafficking. You have evidence showing you applied for an extension of stay in a timely manner if you're a visa overstayer. Improper entry to the U.S. is a tricky legal situation. The immigration laws outlining improper entry fall under U.S. Code Title 8, Section 1325. They can also be found in the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 275. The most typical depiction of improper entry is the illegal crossing the border at an unguarded border crossing. But there are many ways that a person can face punishment for illegal immigration. A person is considered to have illegally entered the U.S. if they A. enter at a place without immigration officers present or at a location that is not a designated point of entry. B. enter without being examined or inspected by immigration officers. C. enter based on false or misleading information. Or D. enter while willfully concealing facts or materials. Examples of illegal entry include lying on a visa application or providing false documents or even a fake identification card or a green card. Unlawful entry is a felony, and having a felony offense makes it extremely difficult to legally re-enter the United States. A list of undocumented immigration civil offenses and violation consequences are listed below. This didn't used to be the case, but it is now. But technically, at least throughout American history, unlawful entry into the United States did not even exist at all for the longest time, but now it's considered a felony. What about the statute of limitations? I actually don't think there is one. This is just a regular law firm, an immigrant attorney firm. No, not a civil felony. I'm saying it's now considered a felony. Punishments for illegal crossings include criminal penalties for reentry as well as reentry of certain removed people, such as those removed due to a conviction or aggravated felony, misdemeanors, crimes, and felonies that differ from aggravated felony. First punishment for crossing the border illegally is a civil penalty fine of $50 to $250, imprisonment for up to 6 months, or both fines and imprisonment. Okay? So if you're caught crossing the border, your penalty could literally be $50 to $250. Second punishment for crossing the border illegally is a civil penalty fine, imprisonment for up to 2 years, both fines and imprisonment. There's also penalties for improper entry by marriage fraud, penalties for improper entry by entrepreneurship fraud, fraudulently establishing a business to avoid immigration laws. There's reentry with additional crimes. Yes, there is a crime of improper entry under US 1325, which we're looking at, which makes it a misdemeanor to enter the country illegally, but that doesn't apply to visa overstays. And B, the statute of limitations is 5 years, and most undocumented immigrants have been here for 15 plus. Oh, I didn't know that there was a statute of limitation. To summarize, it is not a crime to be in the U.S. in violation of immigration law. Visa overstays haven't committed any crimes, and the majority of people who did commit a crime when they crossed the border are now over a decade past the time when that offense was prosecutable. The one exception to the above is for individuals previously deported who then re-enter the country illegally. For that group, it is a crime for them simply to be in the U.S., and the statute of limitations does not begin to run until the person comes onto immigration's radar. There is no statute of limitations on this. The defining condition was illegal entry. The crime is remaining. It resets every single day. False. Federal law provides the statute of limitations begin to run when the elements of a crime are completed. For improper entry, the crime is completed after the entry occurs. At that moment, the 5-year statute of limitation begins to run. Here are a pattern of jury instructions for a violation of 8 USC 1325. The essential elements are: the defendant is an alien. The defendant knowingly entered the U.S. The defendant entered at a place other than a port of entry. There it is. Why are you pretending like statutes of limitation matter? No, they don't. Under the Trump administration, I mean, no laws truly matter under the Trump administration. I'm just simply telling you what the existing laws are. Even the existing laws are more forgiving than I suspected. I didn't know that there was a statute of limitation of 5 years, for example. But even then, clearly, the way that our enforcers interpret / use the existing laws are entirely different than whether these laws are lenient or not. Okay? Obviously, this is being used for pure politics. There's no legitimate reason for this level of apprehension and this level of scrutiny. And it's purely for invoking white nativist sentiment and doing PR for this government to make it seem like they're doing a great job taking care of these rugged criminals.